Welcome back to another edition of the Roll Toddy Draft Blog. We are going to be previewing the Alabama-Ole Miss game. This is a big week for Herbie May and I here. Herbie, are you ready for rivalry week?
On. It is so on, dude. Bring it.
Well, we're going to do about a four-part segment here, talking about just kind of the state of the teams, how they are players, key players. But let's start off with, like I said, the state of the teams. With Alabama, I know for me, obviously, new offensive coordinator Lane Kiffin has brought in a lot of new wrinkles to the offense. Amari Cooper is having a phenomenal season. But at the end of the day, Alabama is saying they're looking to run the ball. So I expect when Alabama arrives in Oxford and right after kickoff, that you're going to get a heavy dose of that run-heavy offense with, obviously, the Blake Sims wrinkle of his ability to run the ball as well as drop back and pass, something you've really seen some improvement on. And I expect Alabama overall always to play that tough defense. But I'm going to be interested to see how they scheme their style to play against an Ole Miss team that has definitely improved since last year when they came to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I remember that I made that trip. I made the trip the past 2 years, and obviously this is a different game. It's got different hype. Game day's coming to Oxford, and there's more riding here. And I think this defense is definitely something to battle against, man. I think this Ole Miss defense is real. I didn't like how we played against Memphis this past week, but I'm expecting us to come out, and I'm expecting us to throw the ball. I think that, I think we are going to rely a lot on Bo Wallace to come in, and he's going to have to really air it out, and he's going to have to take some risks. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. I think, this is our opportunity to finally win, and I think it's going to come down to some risks, and I think a lot of it's going to come down to how Bo Wallace plays this game.
I definitely think Bo Wallace is a key for Ole Miss, just like I think Blake Sims will be a key for Alabama. It's going to be an interesting way to kind of see how these two quarterbacks, who Bo Wallace now going into his third year as a starter, how he's improved in this game, where in a matchup where he has not really played too well. And Blake Sims, who is the guy that, I'll fully admit that no one in Alabama really wanted to start. Everyone was looking for Jacob Coker. But Lane Kiffin has come in and really made a real quarterback out of Blake Sims. And I think that is really part of Alabama's identity, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, they need to obviously be very careful in that pass game with the pass defense. The pass rush hasn't been great for Alabama, but the front seven has still been sturdy. And I think Kirby Smart is going to really dial up some blitzes to try and throw off that hurry up offense that Ole Miss runs.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think you're right in saying Bo Wallace definitely hasn't played well in this game the past couple of years, and like we both just said, he's going to be a big key here. And I think my biggest concern is if you get him frazzled and he starts throwing the ball and running around like he doesn't know what he's doing with it, we're going to start seeing interceptions, and then we're going to have a big problem. Then we're going to have to rely on the run game, which we just don't have that power back that you guys have. We just got to have so many little speedsters and small guys that that do great things, but that worry me against the Tide. So. I think so much of this game is riding on Bo Wallace. But, the defense of yours is pretty stout, pretty good. I'm really, really excited about our front seven this year. And our secondary is pretty great, man. Tony Connor and Cody Pruitt they're going to be huge keys to this game. And they need to get on Amari Cooper early. They need to hit him hard. And they realize that we're here. We're here to play this game. We're here to play you. And we're going to knock you off your feet.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to a little bit more negative subject, but injuries coming into this game. Like we said, it's the first ranked matchup for both teams and Alabama's first road game, so injuries can loom large for either side. Herbie, tell me a little bit about the injuries on the Ole Miss side of the ball, if there are any.
So I think Senquez Golson on the defensive side of the ball is not going to play this weekend. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's above 50% that he's not going to play, which is going to be a big hit. I mean, he is a great outside linebacker who's all over the field, been making great plays for us all season, and his last season as well. And he really, if we don't have him, that's going to definitely be a big hole that in our defense that Saban's going to exploit. So that's our one big injury out of our starting crew this week.
Yeah, Alabama was lucky enough to come off a bye week, so they've had some time to heal up after a few injuries that they noticeably had. In Florida, obviously Blake Sims with that shoulder and arm stinger was just really a deep bruise or a stinger, so it wasn't a huge concern, but he was on a pitch count this past week, but so far today has been a full go. I just read earlier online. And the other one I would say is Eddie Jackson. Tony Brown, the freshman from Texas, got a lot of playing time and started for the Crimson Tide, but Eddie Jackson's a guy who had played a big role against Ole Miss last year in that shutout win that Alabama had in Tuscaloosa. But going into Oxford this weekend, I think Eddie Jackson, his ability to come back and play after not only recovering from an ACL tear this spring, but just already to be playing and having an impact, I think is big for Alabama. Other than that, though, I can't really think of any injuries. Last week, Derrick Henry made his return after having a shoulder injury and obviously went for 100 yards against a good Florida defense. So I don't think that he has any injury issues. So I think both sides, it looks like the injury issues should be pretty cleaned up, and you should have two pretty full squads going up against each other.
Yeah, I think it's the right setting. I think this game is. I think everyone's been waiting for this game. Certainly, everyone in Oxford's been waiting. Man, we've been talking about game day for the past 3 weeks, or since the start of the season, honestly. And I think everyone's ready. I think this is the game. I think this is a team that Saban respects a lot more. And I think one of the huge keys to your game is going to be coaching. I mean, we've talked about it before. When you give Saban more than a week to prepare, he's going to find holes and he's going to exploit them, and which is what frightens me the most. I mean, it's like when he plays the national championship against Notre Dame. I mean, it was that first drive that he ran. It was just so unbelievable. It put fear in the eyes of Notre Dame fans. And that's probably one of my bigger fears is the fact that Saban has had 2 weeks to prepare for this game.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's all we have for this first segment on the Ole Miss-Alabama game. Keep watching for our 4-part series. We'll have part 2 coming up to you tomorrow shortly. Thank you for watching the Roll Toddy Draft Blog.
Toddy Toddy.
All right, so yeah, just time out here. We'll go over what we're going to talk about in the next segment. So for the next one, we're going to do just strengths and weaknesses of both teams. They're pretty obvious, but obviously we can talk about just have a little bit more inside information between the two of us. And then we'll kind of do a cross-examination. So what I think is a strength and a weakness, that'll be how we finish. So I'm obviously going to go all through Alabama, go through their strengths. Then you're going to go through Ole Miss strengths. Then we're going to talk about the weaknesses. I'm going to have you continue on Ole Miss's weaknesses. Then I'm going to end with Alabama weakness. Then we're going to kind of have a quick cross-examination. So what you think is a strength and weakness for Alabama, then what I think is a strength and weakness for Ole Miss.
Okay.
All right, so let's gear up for part 2. Welcome back to the Roll Toddy Draft Blog on our part 2 of the Alabama-Ole Miss preview for this big game weekend. Obviously, this is a big game for Herbie May and I, and we are going to be breaking down the strengths and weaknesses now of both teams. So, Herbie, tell me about some of the strengths for Ole Miss.
So, Shake, I mean, obviously we've got a different team this year. I think, everyone's grown up, everyone's matured, and this is a team that Alabama's coming in respecting at least this year. I remember going to Tuscaloosa last year, and there was little to zero respect for the team that was coming in. Got to be excited about the receiving corps. Laquan Treadwell and Cody Core have just had 2 great seasons so far. Both great receivers. Vince Sanders is just come out of his shell in his senior year. Laquan Treadwell is all over the field. He's all over the place, make any catch possible. I think what it comes down to is if Bo can get him the ball this weekend, that's going to be a huge key to this game. I think your offensive line, you got to be happy with the way Laramie Tunsil is playing. Ben Still, his first year as a starter, fraternity brother of mine, has had a great season as well. Really excited for him. I think that offensive line is strong. Defensive line, there's no doubt about it. Robert Kimbichi, coming off the edge, he's going to be firing off. He's going to be looking for Blake Sims. You're looking to make him uncomfortable, get him out of the pocket. Obviously, you got to worry about Blake Sims on his feet, but I think Robert Kimbichi can keep him in the cage and take care of him. And I think honestly, one of our biggest strengths are Cody Pruitt and Tony Connor, 2 of the best, and Trey Elston. We got 3 of the best safeties in the game. Tony Connor at nickel. I mean, they're unbelievable in the secondary. And I think what they need to do is they need to come out and they need to smack Amari Cooper in the mouth, and they need to let him know that we're here, we're physical, we're here to play, and this isn't just your regular Ole Miss team. This is the number 10 ranked team in the country, and we're here to play ball.
For Alabama, I think obviously you look at so far, it's really been the offense and what Lane Kiffin has done for Alabama. Shockingly enough, Alabama really almost looks more like an offensive-based team rather than a defensive-based team like we've seen in years. And you've really seen the evolution of Blake Sims coming in, being that 5th-year senior, becoming more of a quarterback rather than just an athlete, having a strong passing game. You saw what he did with Amari Cooper against Florida. Amari Cooper is obviously a strength of the offense with his big playability, can catch it short, can catch it deep, and really has elite route running skills. I think that's going to be a big test for Ole Miss and a big key for Alabama. And obviously, as well on the offense, is the running game. You always have to fear the Alabama running game. The offensive line has opened up some holes for them. They had a little trouble getting something going for T.J. Yeldon until late in the second half last week. But I expect Yeldon to come in and have a big game, as well as Derrick Henry, this guy who was the number 9 ranked recruit. Yeah, you saw him come up and show out in that Sugar Bowl loss to Oklahoma last year. And so far this year, he has just looked like really the next thing at Alabama, really in football. He's 6'3", he's 250 pounds, he can break away, he can run you over, he can catch the ball, he can block. It's really exciting to watch him play, and I think he's going to be a key for Alabama on the defensive side. Front seven, and Trey DePriest has done a great job of assuming that leader on defense, that leadership role, and I really think that with his leadership, Alabama can come out and have a good day stopping the run and having an effective day stopping Ole Miss's defense, their offense. But now let's go to the weaknesses of both teams. Herbie, let's look at Ole Miss. There's a couple weaknesses there that there are in any team, but really what would you point out as some keys to Ole Miss, or some key weaknesses on Ole Miss?
Two big ones, and I'm probably going to stay. I mean, I think we'll do three. We'll do one on defense too. So I think your first has got to be Bo Wallace. I mean, you need Bo Wallace to play well in this game. I mean, there's no way around it. He cannot play the game that he played against LSU or the games that he's played against Alabama the past 2 seasons. It's just not in the cards. I mean, if we need to win this game, and he needs to act like the starter that he is, a 3-year starter that he is, and he needs to get to the ball. He needs to get the ball to the guys that need the ball. Laquan Treadwell. And I'm telling you, one of the keys to him this weekend is he needs to make smart decisions. Do not force this ball. Throw it out of bounds. Be smart with it. If you're going to use your legs, get the yards you can, and get on the ground. Do not get injured. Devontae Kincaid is not ready for this game. Be smart. Second, running back. You know, we've got a bunch of speeches that come out of the back. Tavius Mathers, all those guys. They're great players, but you know, I wish we had a Derrick Henry, someone over 200 pounds that we could ensure could maybe get 3 yards when we need it. Just lower his shoulder and get through the center of your defense. And Jordan Wilkins is a guy that I'm starting to warm up to. He's forced. We got 4 guys that we really kind of rotate in there, and I wish we kind of had a guy in a certain situation. Jeremy Liggins' package is pretty unbelievable. It's fun to watch. He's a big old number 15 in there. That's not necessarily a weakness, but I think it's a package that we need to use this weekend and maybe use him in those short yardage situations. Second, the linebacking core. If we lose Sanquez this week, then we're going to have big trouble with those linebackers. So, no. Offensively is where I see the higher weaknesses, and I think Bo really Bo is probably the top weakness.
For me, on the Alabama side, I think it's the pass rush more really than anything. Alabama has kind of been an issue these last 2 seasons now, or I guess it's a season and a half. Last year, Alabama really lacked any consistent pass rush. And this year, it's looking about the same. They're getting a more pressure this year, and they're doing a better job scheming some blitzes and really getting into the backfield, but they're not finishing plays in the backfield. They're, causing some incompletions, but really as a defense, you want to get that quarterback on the ground. They've done a good job on running backs, but not really sacking the quarterback. And I think that Bo Wallace, while he's not really a big-time running threat, he's a good enough athlete that he can cause Alabama some problems. And that with that lack of pass rush, you have to look a little bit at the secondary. Now, Alabama's secondary, I think, is much better than people give it credit for, but it's still young and moderately inexperienced. They've gotten better so far this season. I think them playing West Virginia in the first week with that 4 wide receiver set up offense really has helped them gel together and grow up faster. But at the same time, you have to see more. You saw a good secondary last week, or 2 weeks ago, against Florida, but that's Florida. This is an Ole Miss offense that has a lot of success throwing the ball. And I think that Alabama is going to have to put a lot more pressure on Bo Wallace if they are going to avoid any of those secondary letdowns that you saw against West Virginia. Now let's look a little bit more at both teams. We're going to reverse roles here, Herbie. So give me a strength and a weakness or two for Alabama that you are looking out for as an Ole Miss fan.
So I think there's no lie that you don't have the same secondary as you did last year. And I think that's going to play a big effect against this kid Cody Core and Laquan Treadwell. I think if Bo Wallace does the job that he needs to do, if he is the mature quarterback that I know he can be, and he puts the ball in the right spots, then Laquan's going to be able to exploit that secondary. And I think you said it already too, is the pass rush. I mean, if you can't get to Bo, then he can be the quarterback that we need. So I think on the defensive side of the ball is really where your strongest weaknesses are, or your biggest weaknesses are. Offensively, I don't think you have any problems at all. I want to say Blake Sims is not a weakness, but he's I don't think he's an AJ, and I don't think he's anything stellar, but he doesn't really make mistakes. So I'm not going to put him in your weaknesses category. But that secondary is not what it used to be. And like you said, the pass rush over the past 2 years has not been Alabama's strong point.
Well, for me, looking at Ole Miss, I think you see, and obviously the turnovers are an issue. You saw that this past weekend once again rear its ugly head. Bo Wallace just makes bad decisions when he gets any kind of pressure on him. So like you said, I think that pass rush will be key for Alabama, because if they're not getting to Bo Wallace, then they can't force Bo Wallace to make those bad decisions. But also I think something to look for with Ole Miss is maturity. You mentioned that this past year, Ole Miss, or last year in Tuscaloosa, Ole Miss made some comments. We can score on anyone. We're not scared of any team. But they came in and kind of showed their lack of maturity. This year, I thought that Ole Miss had gotten past that, and last night I believe I sent you that article of Cody Pruitt sending out, we're not scared of Alabama, this isn't a very good team, we don't have to respect them as much, blah, 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 whatever it might be. And while Ole Miss is, yes, mature on the field, you just don't poke the bear. And Alabama, until, obviously last year they couldn't three-peat, but really until someone can establish some dominance over Alabama or consistently knock them out, Alabama is the bear, and they're the standard that everyone sets their roster by, or they're the ultimate measuring stick right now. So for me, that showed a very big lack of maturity off the field. Just early in the week, kind of poking fun at Alabama is not a smart decision by Cody Pruitt. And yes, Ole Miss is a better team than they were last year. But to me, I got to see some more maturity from them before I really, I'm willing to pick them in an upset bid.
I think you're absolutely right. I was bummed. A lot of us were bummed to see that. I think that we played this season well so far. We've showed some people that we're here, and we're definitely a team to reckon with this year. But I don't need Cody Pruitt coming in and saying that we're not afraid of Bama and all this stuff, because there's no doubt. Bama almost repeated last year, so and they're arguably the best team in college football. So no, I totally agree with you. That was not. I want to see more maturity as well, and I thought we were going to get it, especially from Cody. So I think
you gotta show me more than that.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Well, that's all for this segment on our Alabama-Ole Miss preview, but watch out for part 3 and 4 coming later this week. Thank you, Herbie. All right. So now we're going to move on to key players. So I'd say let's just both, kind of focus on one or two, and then we'll move on to let's pick an offensive and defensive player that we think is a key, like a really important player on both sides, and then we'll choose one weakness for both our teams. Just a guy who's like, man, why is he in the game, or why are we even considering playing him this week?
Okay, hold on. I don't know if I know who that is yet.
Fair enough.
About each other, or just about our own teams?
I'd say about our own teams.
Okay.
Someone, I know you mentioned, obviously, Tony Connor and Cody Pruitt. Who is did you say that there was a third safety whose name I can't remember right now?
Trey Elson.
Trey Elson. Is he a corner or is he a safety?
He's our rover. So we've got a nickel corner, free corner.
Okay. Because I was thinking about this on the car on the way home last night, just like, who is a corner who's really going to guard Amari?
Well, use like a nickel cornerback, a free cornerback, a rover, a free safety.
Okay, so he's like Jarek Williams is our star guy who plays a little bit of everything.
But they're all really good. I mean, I don't know if there's anyone. So I guess weakness. I could pick one of these running backs. Justin Bell, Aaron Morris. Who's your weakness?
My weakness is going to be Bradley Silv, I think. I don't know if he's really going to play, though. If not, I might switch it over to Cam Robinson, who's been good, but obviously he's a freshman left tackle. I don't care how freaky he is. He's probably going to be someone that you guys are coming after.
Yeah. Fuck. Okay, I guess. All right, I'll do Denzel.
Okay. Really, Denzel Kimdichie.
Yeah. Just because Sedarius Bryant's starting over him.
Oh, and, really? He's not even starting anymore?
Yeah. So, well, he's starting on our depth chart. I mean, I think I just want to see more from him than I've seen this season. I guess not necessarily a weakness, but I think I'll talk more about it. This is an opportunity for him.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
What do you want to do?
It doesn't have to be, the guy who's like, oh my god, this guy's going to blow it for us. It just has to be a guy who you're a little more worried about when facing a big team.
So do you want to do one offensive strength, or one offensive key, one defensive key, and then one overall weakness?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do that.
All right.
Okay, so let's reset. Welcome back to part 3 of our Alabama-Ole Miss preview. I'm here with Herbie May, as always, and we've been breaking down the different keys, strengths, and weaknesses of this game, who these two teams are. Now let's move on to key players for this top 10 matchup. Alabama at number 3, Ole Miss ranked at number 10. So, Herbie, let's start with you. Who are two players for Ole Miss on the offensive and defensive side of the ball who are really going to be key this weekend if Ole Miss is going to win?
I think this is I don't think I can stop saying his name. Laquan Treadwell is the guy on offense. I mean, he is the guy that needs the ball this weekend. He is our playmaker. He's going to make the big plays. He's going to make the game-winning catch in the end zone if we're in contention. I'm telling you right now, Bo Wallace needs to be smart with the ball, but when he has an opportunity to get to Laquan, get it there. Let him do what we brought him in here to do. He's the number 1 wide receiver in the country when we recruited him, and he's playing like it, and he is going to be the key on offense. The Alabama secondary is lacking, and he can exploit it. He has the ability to do it. So I think offensively, absolutely no-brainers, Laquan Treadwell. Defensively, got to be Cody Pruitt. He stirred the pot last night by making that comment, saying he's not afraid of Bama. I think he's that type of player. I don't think he is scared personally. And I think he's going to be the key to keeping Amari Cooper in check. I mean, you've got to come out. And Amari Cooper is an unbelievable wide receiver, arguably the best in the game. There's no doubt about that. But I think the only way that you can get to guys like these is if you come out, you show a dominant presence early, you smack them in the mouth and be like, all right, you want to come play in Oxford, I'm going to hit you every time you touch the ball. And I think you got to play Cody Pruitt 10 yards farther back. You've got to leave him back there as a safety valve. Because there's no doubt that Amari Cooper's going to make big plays in this game. But Cody Pruitt's got to be there to show, to announce his presence and come up and smack Amari Cooper in the mouth.
For me, on the Alabama side of the ball, obviously Cooper is the obvious choice on offense, but I think someone who's really going to be just as important is T.J. Yeldon. He is 900-some yards away from becoming Alabama's all-time leading rusher. He's coming off 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and after a great first game against West Virginia, he didn't really get that many carries in those 2 kind of warm-up games, and last week he had a tough time getting going against Florida, who has a very similar defensive front and talent on their defensive front to Ole Miss. So for me, T.J. Yeldon has to not only set the tone, but also be a comeback, or have to be able to come back in and be a change of pace to Derrick Henry when Derrick Henry comes in to really pound the ball up the middle and act as the big bruising back as Yeldon was to Eddie Lacy back in 2012. But also on defense, I think a key is going to be Eddie Jackson and similarly Cyrus Jones. Alabama's probably not going to switch the sides of their corners on the side of the field, and one or the other isn't going to follow Laquan Treadwell. But those 2 corners have to play big time so that Landon Collins, Nick Perry, and Geno Smith back on the back end as our safeties, who obviously Landon Collins is another key of the defense, but those corners have to cover up those explosive wide receivers that you have there in Oxford, so that the safeties don't have to do as much work and they can be free to roam the backfield and make plays and hopefully force Bo Wallace into making some of those poor decisions that he's made in the past if Alabama is going to be successful.
And then weaknesses. So I don't really like the I guess calling this a weakness, but I think this is more of an opportunity category. I think Ole Miss is stronger in certain areas than others instead of weaknesses. But if I'm going to put this opportunity category out there, I'm going to put Denzel Kondichi there. His brother's had a great season and has been playing like we want him to play. I think Denzel. I think he's second on the depth chart right now. I don't know if he's actually starting this weekend. But I think he's got an opportunity to show us, the really the All-American that he is, and that he's got an opportunity to come out and he's to be one of the leaders of this team and to make some big plays this weekend and kind of reestablish that he was the first Kondichi, in Vaught Hemingway, and he was here first, and this is his big game. So I think this is a big opportunity for him to show Oxford what he's still got in the tank.
Yeah, and for Alabama, a guy who either hasn't played really up to snuff or could end up being a weakness, I would say on the other side is definitely a big opportunity for him is who I mentioned as one of my key players, and that's Cyrus Jones. Last year, he just was not very good. He's a kid from Baltimore who I'm sure you are very well aware of, Herbie.
I played him in 8th grade.
Yeah, see, exactly. And he's a phenomenally talented athlete. He's fast. He can run with anyone. He's not overly sized, only about 5'11", 5'10", but he made the transition to corner last year, and the first person he had to guard was Mike Evans, who just ran all over him. So you already have a bad taste left in your mouth about him. He made one of the big mistakes in that Auburn game last year and allowed Auburn to tie the game back up in the last couple of minutes. And then in the Sugar Bowl, he wasn't much better against the Oklahoma offense. He really did not show up in big moments. But so far this year, he really has played lockdown corner, and not a lot of people are noticing or giving him a lot of credit just because there's so much, angst and frustration with this Alabama secondary and some of the big plays they let up. But right now, him and Landon Collins being the juniors and the leaders of the secondary have to step up this weekend, and I think it's a great chance for him to do it against an elite wide receiver like Laquan Treadwell. And as far as really a weakness for Alabama goes, he hasn't played like he's a weakness, but being the true freshman, Cam Robinson, Alabama's stud left tackle, is a 6'6", 320-pound freshman. He might already be better than Cyrus Kouandjio. But Ole Miss is going to come after him. He's a freshman, and that's something that we are definitely going to have to watch out for on the Crimson Tide side of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great matchup, but that's all for this segment. Watch out for our final segment as we make our final predictions on who we think is going to win this top 10 SEC matchup. For the Roll Tide Draft Blog, I'm Baker Lehman, here with Herbie May, as always. All right. So, final predictions, just kind of similar stuff that we've gone over, just keys to the game, why you think, I assume that, why you actually, let's do what I said. Let's do how Alabama wins, what Alabama will both talk about. Then we'll do how Ole Miss wins, same thing, both just how we both think that they can win. Then we'll do our personal final prediction.
Okay. You want to do that? You want me to do how Ole Miss wins? You do how Alabama wins, and then we pick them.
Sure, we can do that. We can just agree or disagree in between as we kind of talk about it.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So let's reset and get ready. All right. Welcome back to Part 4 and our final edition of the Alabama-Ole Miss game preview. It's just a day before we get into this game, so let's take a look at how both teams are going to win the game. So Herbie, how does Ole Miss pull off this upset at home, and is it really an upset if they're already at home playing in Vaught Hemingway?
This obviously there'd be no doubt if Ole Miss wins this game, it'd be a massive upset. I mean, Oxford might. That might be my last video here if Oxford actually wins, because Oxford might burn to the. I've been kind of persistent about the way I've been talking about it, about physicality, and I think that defensively, one of the keys to this game is going to be this secondary coming down and really playing an aggressive style of play. I mean, like I said, with Cody Pruitt being one of the keys to this game. He's got to come out and he's got to smack Amari Cooper in the mouth. And T.J. Yeldon, if he's going to get second level, Cody Pruitt, Trey Ellison, all these guys are going to have to come up and smack him in the mouth. Got to play an aggressive style of football. There's no doubt that these guys are going to make big plays. T.J. Yeldon is begging for a breakout game, and Amari Cooper is arguably the best receiver in this game. These guys are going to make plays, but we have to establish that we are here, we're physical, and we're ready to compete and take this into the fourth quarter and potentially win this game. And again, Bo Wallace is a huge key. I need a smart Bo Wallace this weekend. I need a Bo Wallace that if he's going to use his legs, he's smart with it. He slides and he takes care of his body. I need a Bo Wallace that isn't going to force the ball and that is going to take his lumps and he's going to throw it out of bounds on third down if he needs to. I'm happy to see that. I'd so much rather see that than a huge pick from one of these safeties. I can still, granted, isn't as good as some safeties that you've had in the past, but I'd so much rather see, a 3-and-out on third down than see a huge pick that gets in Bo's head, and then he starts doing what Bo, we start seeing the Bo that we hate. I've seen the Bo that we've liked for the past couple weeks now. And he has been smart and he plays well, but this is a different animal that's coming into Ball Hemingway this weekend. So, I think Ole Miss wins with Bo playing a smart game in this secondary, stepping up and knocking your playmakers in the mouth.
I have to agree. I think it really does come down to Bo Wallace. The Ole Miss defense is going to show up. Maturity off the field aside or not, Ole Miss's defense is going to show up. They've shown that this year. You saw that straight out of the gate against Boise State in Atlanta week 1. That defense was going to come out and make as many plays as possible. But you're right. This is a different animal. This isn't Boise State or this isn't Memphis. This isn't any of these teams that you played so far. This is Alabama. This has been the gold standard of college football for the past 5-6 years now. And I think you're right. Bo Wallace has to play smart. He has to be able to effectively keep the offense balanced. They have to be able to run the ball a little bit to keep Alabama honest if they're going to exploit that secondary with those explosive wide receivers that you keep mentioning. Let's flip things over to the Alabama side. And I agree, it's going to come down to quarterback play. This is Blake Sims' first true road game. I think that he's going to be helped in this atmosphere, just like he's going to be helped by the fact that he started his season, his first start of his career, came in at Georgia Dome against a out-of-conference opponent in West Virginia. It wasn't in the friendly confines of Bryant-Denny Stadium. And so he's ready for what will obviously be a pretty ferocious Ole Miss crowd, but we'll also have a heavy dose of Alabama fans in there. We're two very similar schools. We're not very far apart. Likely, as we can tell from our own experience, if you know someone in Alabama and you go to Ole Miss, that you probably know. If you go to Alabama, you likely know someone at Ole Miss, and vice versa. So to me, Blake Sims just has to stay calm, keep making those explosive plays with his legs that he's been able to do, be smart with the football as he has, and I think Alabama will be just fine and keep that offense balanced. And then on the same level, they have to get to Bo Wallace. They have to rattle him and force him into those mistakes. The keys for Ole Miss are the same as the keys for Alabama. Simply, Alabama has to have some consistent offensive play, as we've seen so far. And, Lane Kiffin probably has something else up his sleeve. And for Alabama to win, they need Bo Wallace to, Bo Wallace and make those mistakes. He has his own verb, and that's not something you really want to see in your quarterback. But if Alabama can get to Bo Wallace, make some plays in the secondary, and shut down Laquan Treadwell for a little bit, I think Alabama can go in and have a pretty, I won't say easy, because that's not fair to a very good Ole Miss team, but should have a very successful Saturday. So now let's kind of get into it. Herbie, who's winning this game? Who's walking out at about 5 p.m. a happy guy?
Oh God, I you know what? I don't even know if you can post it. Post this video. I really don't. But you know what? I'm gonna be honest with myself, and I gotta keep my expectations low for this game, because if it happens, I am going to just be so in your face you can't even believe it. But I've got us going into the fourth, at least pretty tight. But I've got Bama winning 35-24.
35-24. I think that's very fair. I'm going to go with the Crimson Tide, but I'm going to go 31-21. I just simply think that at the end of the day, Alabama has played better in more of these big games and has more experience throughout the roster with it, and it's no disrespect to Ole Miss. I think this is the year that Ole Miss finally really turns the corner and will be a contender. but it's not going to start here against Alabama. I just think that, or especially early in the season, and this is the first of Alabama's really games in the gauntlet part of their schedule, I think Alabama will come in ready to play, especially coming off a bye week.
I just think that there's way more that can go wrong for us and can go wrong for you. I think Blake just has to keep playing the way he's playing, keep playing safe, and, you know, if Bo gets frazzled, with which I know he can do, it's just not going to go. And I think it's going to be a battle. I think it's going to be a three-quarter battle, and I think a couple things are going to go wrong in the fourth quarter. Someone gets tired, someone makes a bad decision, and you just get 9 points out of reach that we just can't close with, you know, probably like 4 minutes left. So I think, and it's going to be devastatingly heartbreaking. But you know what? I'm also not counting out an upset. You know, I also think an upset is very possible if Ole Miss plays the perfect game.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I just think that at one point or another that Alabama's horses are just a little bit bigger and better trained than Ole Miss is. But I think that Alabama is going to come away with this win. But certainly, I too am hoping, just as a football fan, that we walk away from this 2:30 game on CBS as probably the game of the week, and I think it will be.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. You better believe. I wish you were coming, dude. I mean, literally, college game day, this is the time to come to Oxford. You're in the real world. Come back to college with us.
Someday. Someday I'll be back. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in on our four-part series previewing the Alabama-Ole Miss matchup, and keep looking for our other articles. We obviously will have more NFL Rookies of the Week coming out. And thank you for watching the Roll Tide Draft Blog. Roll Tide.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Really excited about this weekend. If you're, make sure you watch all of our videos, and if you're coming to Oxford, I'll be at the Sigma Nu tent. Hotty toddy.